Okay, hey Pisces, so let's get into your fashion sense, your style, and let's really see if the way you dress matches your zodiac sign. Into it, I will give the disclaimer that this information applies to you if you have a Pisces sun, of course, but it also applies to you if you have Pisces, Venus, Mars, Moon, or Rising. And in fact, the people that I show you in this video, the celebrities, influencers, people like that, have prominent Pisces influence, not just their sun sign. So I recommend that you watch this fashion series on my channel for your Venus and Mars sign as well, because I found that the Venus and Mars sign was way more relevant than just sun sign. So let's just get into it. Now, before we do, I want you guys to tell me down below if you could describe your personal style in 3 words, what 3 words would you use? And keep those 3 words in mind, because at the end we're gonna see if your description matches my description and if there's any major patterns between the two. Now, the title that I gave your aesthetic is Uniquely Outlandish. So what we're gonna do is really unpack that title, why I gave you guys that name, and really talk about the trends that you guys wear, the themes of your aesthetics, the clothes that you guys wear, the colors, everything like that. We're really gonna get into it and see what you guys wear and what is the consistent themes within that. So obviously the name speaks for itself. With the Pisces aesthetic, it is very uniquely outlandish, and emphasis on the outlandish. I noticed that a lot of Pisces wear almost like these outrageous outfits, and the best way I would describe it is that, and what I wrote in my notes is funny because I wrote down that it's sort of like when a 3-year-old dresses themselves for the first time, or like a 5-year-old dresses themselves for the first time. It's almost like that outrageous, where you're just pairing very random things together, very bright clothes together, very pattern clothes together. Either way, I noticed that was a common theme with Pisces placements, is just kind of wearing anything, kind of wearing these outrageous colors and putting it all into one outfit. Now, the unique thing I noticed too with Pisces is that a lot of the men tend to be very much into this fashion as well. In the other zodiac signs, I didn't really talk about the guys because I felt like the guys didn't really have a consistent aesthetic. But with Pisces guys in specific, I noticed they have a lot of influence when it comes to fashion. They have a lot of this kind of uniquely outlandish aesthetic, as well as the women. So that's really the key thing with Pisces, is that both the men and the women had consistency with how they dressed when it comes to this unique and outlandish way of dressing. And there wasn't really a huge difference between how the men dressed and how the women dressed, whereas other zodiac signs, the men dressed completely differently than the women. So that's one thing to know with Pisces, which I thought was interesting. Another major theme I noticed with your clothing choices is that you tend to wear clothes that aren't very structured, and kind of like on par with that like oversized trend, but more so just like not structured at all. It's not like you're wearing super tight clothes or super baggy clothes. I feel like it just doesn't have structure at all. I'll put pictures on the screen of what I'm talking about, but there was this overall theme of non-structured clothing. So examples of that probably would be like sweatpants, satin. I noticed satin was a huge, like, I guess fabric you guys wear a lot. Palazzo pants, things that just are clothes but just don't have that same structure as like most clothes. I feel like kimonos was also a huge theme too. Overalls, oh my god, overalls was a huge theme with you guys, Pisces. Men and women, again, both wore overalls or some sort of jumpsuit. I feel like that really matches that like 3-year-old like dressing itself for the first time type of aesthetic that I explained earlier. And really how I would describe your aesthetic in a few words is that it's very grungy, it's also very psychedelic and vintage at the same time. Emphasis on the vintage. I felt like a lot of Pisces style and fashion, I guess, aesthetics were very vintage looking. It wasn't too trendy, it wasn't too mainstream, it wasn't too popular looking, and it wasn't too throwback either. But I felt like it was just like this almost like you teleported from like the 70s or 80s type of aesthetic especially with like Jhené Aiko. I feel like she's a really good example. Vanessa Hudgens is a good example of this kind of almost 70s throwback vintage sort of vibe. So we're gonna talk about your starter pack and like the uniform for Pisces and what I feel like a lot of Pisces have in their wardrobes. Okay, so let's talk about the poster children slash mascots for Pisces and the people that really encapsulate this aesthetic so well. And so the person that does that the best, I feel like, is definitely Tyler, the Creator. Now Tyler has a Pisces sun, obviously, and you can see he has an entire clothing brand that really is on par with this kind of outrageous, shockingly bright colors, textures, patterns type of aesthetic. And you can see that in his fashion line and clothing and what he wears on a daily basis. Another person that is really good to look at is definitely Bad Bunny. And Bad Bunny and Tyler, I think, have like the same birthday, but Bad Bunny has Pisces moon and sun. So Bad Bunny and Tyler are really great examples to look at. And then for women, I feel like the mascot would be definitely Billie Eilish. Again, it's almost like this outrageously big clothing. She wears like lime green. Obviously, she's a celebrity, so she wears more exaggerated versions of Pisces aesthetics. But honestly, I feel like even in regular life, Pisces wear that same kind of outrageous clothing, just like on a more smaller scale. So those are kind of like the mascots I would think of when I think of Pisces aesthetics and fashion. Also, a major theme I noticed with Pisces is that they tend to set trends quite often. Obviously, the biggest example being someone like Tyler, the Creator, Kanye West. And what I found interesting is that not only do they set a trend, it's not like they just like wore a brown shirt so everyone wore brown shirts. I feel like they set an entire aesthetic, and especially with Tyler, I feel like he pioneered that aesthetic of, I don't even know what you would call it, but like cut off shorts and like, I really don't know if there's a specific name for it, but Tyler has been wearing those kind of clothes since like probably like 2012. And I feel like ever since then, people started dressing like that, if that makes sense. And comment down below if you noticed that too. And then obviously with Kanye West, he's set the trend of this like non-structured sweatpants athleisure sort of look with his Yeezy season 1, 2, and 3. So both Pisces men, you can see in those scents, kind of set that aesthetic. It's not like they just set one singular trend or one singular item or made one item popular. I feel like they set this whole kind of vibe with how they dress. And even though it's kind of outrageous, kind of crazy, and people might laugh at it at first, I feel like people still kind of emulate that aesthetic that Pisces placements do wear. And so the people I just named are really kind of the most extreme versions of that, but I feel like the more toned down versions of Pisces aesthetics is probably Camila Cabello, I don't know how to say her name, my bad. She is a Pisces sun, and she's a Pisces sun and Venus. So she kind of embodies that vintage kind of 70s, almost throwback vintage vibe with her aesthetics and how she looks, as well as Jhené Aiko. And those are the more toned down versions I could find, as well as Vanessa Hudgens, who's a Pisces moon. So those are kind of like the girls. I feel like the girls dress a little bit more toned down than the guys, but either way, they both kind of dress in a sort of outrageous way with bright colors, textures, and patterns. And I feel like the most common color I saw was very bright yellow or very bright neon green. And so let's talk about the starter pack or the uniform for Pisces and what I feel like a lot of Pisces have in their wardrobe. So definitely with Pisces, I would say it's really hard to pin down one or two items you guys all have in your wardrobe just because your style is so like eccentric. But definitely when it comes to clothing, I feel like you have clothing that is more loose or deconstructed. You don't have clothing that is super tight, super fussy, super structured. You almost wear clothing that is kind of sloppy looking. Not to say you look sloppy, but obviously just kind of looser fitting clothing, like kind of like the clothes you would wear when you just like woke up and you didn't really feel like wearing like a full outfit, so you wear like a satin kimono and like, I don't know, a long dress. It's like almost like you wear what you feel like. You don't really have that filter of like, oh, I'm gonna wear this because I'm going with this people, or I'm gonna do that. I feel like you have that very original, very unique, again, outlandish way of dressing that doesn't really abide by society's standards. And so that's kind of like the vibe in your starter pack. Also, I feel like a lot of Pisces have overalls. That's such a major theme I felt with Pisces. It's like overalls, some sort of jumpsuit, especially for girls, like bell bottoms or something like that, or flare pants, satin kimonos, things like that. I definitely noticed those kind of pieces in Pisces wardrobes, and I feel like you might have that in your wardrobe if you're watching this now. And then also in your wardrobe, you have like something really bright yellow or something really bright neon green, especially emphasis on the yellow. And also you guys might have a lot of prints too. So it's not like you just have neutral colors or solid colors, you have a lot of prints, textures, and oftentimes you combine them all into one outfit. So if you resonate with this description of Pisces fashion and style, tell me down below if it matches up with your description. Also message me on Instagram because I'm going to be posting some like real life examples of Pisces placements and how they dress, because I want to see how regular people dress who have Pisces in their chart. If you guys want to be posted, just send me a message on Instagram at astrokit, and I'll see you Pisces in my next video.